Thanks. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight for our Subgrants info session. I'm Danielle. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Organizing with AAPI New Jersey. I dropped in the chat box that I'm based in Montclair, but I'm currently calling in from Florida, where today's high was 85 degrees. So sorry for everyone still in New Jersey, but I'll be back shortly. All right. So if you want to drop in your name, pronouns, organization, or township in the chat box, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we're going to jump in. All right. So during our time together tonight, we'll give a little bit background about the Asian American Coalition of New Jersey. If you're not familiar with us, we'll talk about some of our values and priorities, talk about some past subgrants and projects that we've funded, and then go through the timeline and application. So some of you may be familiar with AAPI New Jersey. It's a statewide pan-Asian nonprofit that supports the state's over 1 million Asian Americans. We do this through policy advocacy, education, and culture and community building. And one of our initiatives is the Asian American Coalition of New Jersey. So this is the arm that does a lot of convenings, bringing together Asian American leaders and community members to figure out what issues are important to them, how can we address them, how can we use our collective power to start making changes that we want to see in our communities. One of the ways that we're supporting the infrastructure of organizations throughout the state is through our subgrants to ensure that we're providing support for organizations to really continue centering and championing Asian Americans throughout the state. So we have done a couple of convenings. We did regional ones over the past year, North, Central, and South Jersey, and we'll actually be hosting a statewide summit in July at Princeton University. Since you're here tonight, you're going to receive the information on that in the future. Hope you can all attend that event. It'll be a really wonderful opportunity for folks to come together to meet other leaders doing similar work, to hopefully gain some tactical skills about how to advance the work in your communities, and also really help sort of bridge, moving from cultural and representation work, which is so important, into some of the maybe civic engagement and change making work that we're also excited to see. We also host Asian American Advocacy Day. We've done 2 of these events down in Trenton. Very exciting to bring around 50 to 65 Asian Americans to the State House, many of whom have never been there before, to talk to legislators, to attend sessions, and really see that this is the people's house. So when there is an issue that you're passionate about, you might feel more empowered and comfortable to go down to Trenton and talk about this yourself. AAPI New Jersey also does a lot of get out the vote work. We do phone banking, text banking, door knocking, voter registration, exit polling, and we'll talk about this later, but this is also another stream of funding that we offer outside of our subgrants. All right. And so the subgrants that we offer, we ask that they are aligned with our values and our priorities. So I just want to talk briefly about our values here. We have, I'm not going to read them all out loud, but diversity, so really connecting and celebrating the really broad expanse of AAPI and H in New Jersey. It's such a broad umbrella, which can be very unifying. Also, there's a lot of nuance within the term AAPI or AANHPI. So we want to make sure that we are celebrating all of the belonging. So thinking about accessibility and inclusion in our work through all the different programmatic areas. And then also solidarity. So doing the work in solidarity with other marginalized communities. When we think about our collective liberation and solidarity, we cannot do that in a silo. Everything that we do is tied to the work that other communities and movements are doing. And for so many of us, we're very grateful to be able to have role models of both Asian American leaders in the past, but also looking towards the Black leaders and Hispanic leaders and Indigenous leaders who have been leading the way. All right, and on to some of our budget and legislative priorities. We have 3 budget priorities around one, healthy AAPI communities budget. So hoping to get lines in the state budget for Asian American communities as a whole so that there is more funding going towards our communities. We're interested in expanding mental health funding. Asian Americans seek help at much lower rates. So we want to make sure that there are culturally responsive options, that there are pipelines for practitioners that are from our communities, and then also support for language access implementation. So there was a law passed for language access, but we haven't seen a ton of progress on that. So we want to make sure that all the departments from the state that need to offer services and resources in languages are actually able to do so. And then sharing two of our legislative priorities. One is around immigrant protections. If you've been following for a while, you might have heard that last year we were trying to get the Immigrant Trust Act passed in coalition with a number of immigrants' rights organizations. That ended up getting split into three separate bills, only one of which ended up being signed by the governor. So there's a lot of work still to do around immigrant protection, especially in today's climate. We want to make sure that we're spreading resources and information to everyone who needs it. And then we also have the New Jersey Voting Rights Act. I think our favorite thing that we like to pull out of the New Jersey Voting Rights Act is that this would increase the languages that some ballots might be available in. So I think in the current language, we could see an increase to have ballots in Chinese in 2 different counties. So it could really benefit Asian American communities and, of course, provide essential protections when our voting rights are being attacked on a national stage, right? The SAVE Act seems to be making progress, which could disenfranchise a number of people across the country, especially Asian Americans. So these are some of our legislative priorities. We'll talk about some of the projects that were in line with some of this immigration protection work, with voting rights and democracy engagement. We just have a couple photos from our 2024 subgrantees, some from our logos of our 2024 subgrants. So in 24, we did a spring and fall round. For 2025 and 2026, we're just doing one round for the year. And I'll pass it over to my colleague Nick to share some stories from our 2025 subgrants.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Ramsey, he, him pronouns. I'm the organizing manager with AAPI New Jersey. Just would like to highlight a couple of our subgrantees. On the bottom lower left, you'll see Care NJ, and they shared with us that they hosted Unlocking the System, Breaking Barriers, which focused on empowering Muslims of South Asian descent in New Jersey to build political power with an emphasis on running for local elections, such as the Board of Education. And then on the upper, next to the flyer on the top right, we have Migrante, New Jersey, and they shared that they launched the Tanggol Migrante, which is Tagalog Filipino for Defend Migrants initiative to strengthen community protections for Filipino immigrants workers across North Jersey. They developed a curriculum for community rights education, including training 25 Know Your Rights trainers, and held educational discussions for migrants and workers on exploitation, wage theft, and immigration insecurity within the Filipino community.
Great, thank you, Nick. So as you can see, the projects that we support are, again, aligned with those values and with the priorities that we shared earlier. So again, our subgrant program is to help strengthen the growth of grassroots organizations and civic engagements throughout New Jersey, and we will grant up to $5,000. Our timeline, y'all are here March 5th at our virtual information session, and then we will open up applications tomorrow. Our applications will be due by April 1st. We'll take about a month to do a thorough review and hopefully have our notifications out by May 1st. Projects should be executed for a 6-month period of June to December, and then our final reports are due on December 15. So within the reports, we try to make things to be not too onerous on our subgrantees. We know a lot of folks are busy doing the work, and it doesn't make sense to take too much of your time to put towards reporting. So for that, we just ask for a summary of the project, some of the outcomes, some photos, maybe a quote or two, and like attendance numbers, if that's applicable. Ooh, okay, sorry, I just turned on the light and it's very bright. For our eligibility, organizations must be a 501(c)(3) or have a fiscal sponsor. You must be based in New Jersey or have a New Jersey specific chapter. One example, we have funded Minkwon. They have sort of their main chapter is in New York, out in Flushing, but they do have a New Jersey specific chapter in Palisades Park that serves Asian communities in New Jersey. Um, these organizations must center and serve Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders. Um, One example of that, so NAMI New Jersey was a 2024 fall subgrantee. They are a mental health organization, but they do have two specific programs dedicated to working with Asian communities, one for South Asian community members and one for Chinese American community members. So that's an example of, an organization that itself didn't necessarily focus on Asian Americans, but it had dedicated programming, which did serve the community, and also, mental health being one of our budget priorities was very much aligned with the work that we were interested in seeing. And I'll also share, if you are a newer organization, maybe you are fiscally sponsored right now, but you submit your paperwork for full incorporation as a C3, and you expect to have that within the next couple of months. We want to be flexible and work with you. We have worked with organizations in the past that have had a fiscal sponsor, but they asked if we could defer payment a couple months so that we were giving the large chunk of that payment for when they had that C3 incorporation. So we were happy to do that. We want to work with organizations, especially grassroots ones. We know, things, there's moving pieces, and we want to be able to be supportive of that work. And so past subgrantees are eligible, but we will give priority to organizations that have not yet received funding from AAPI New Jersey and the coalition. And we will also give priority to organizations with annual budgets under $1 million. So really focusing on building up those grassroots organizations. So what should these projects look like? Again, we would love to see ones focused on civic engagement or align with those policy and advocacy priorities, which again are immigration, voting rights, language access, mental health and well-being, workers' rights, and actually police accountability as well. And then aligned with our values, which we went over. Those are diversity, belonging, and solidarity. And lastly, projects must be nonpartisan. So AAPI New Jersey is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. So we are nonpartisan, meaning not supporting any particular party or any particular candidate. So if you are doing voter outreach, for example, you have to target everyone regardless of party affiliation. And we will also fund some capacity building projects, particularly for newer organizations. So within the application, it's pretty basic. We ask for your contact information, your organization's name, your website, and your mission. We ask for a project description, which should include attendance and demographic information, as well as goals for the project. If it is an event, we want the event date. And then some additional materials that we request are your W-9, your 990 or organizational budget, and your project budget. And we know on Google Forms, if you don't have a Gmail account, you can't submit files. So rather than having it there, we do ask that you email those 3 documents to nick.ramsey@aapinewjersey.org. That will be in the application as well. And before I move on to some other funding opportunities that we offer, I'd love to take a moment and pause to see if there are any questions about the subgrants. Okay, you can feel free to come off mute, raise your hand, drop it in the chat. Or if you have a question that you don't want the group to see, you can feel free to DM that to me in the chat box, and then I can read it out. Let folks can take their time thinking about that. I'm going to move on to talk about some other funding opportunities that we offer. So if you are interested in funding, you apply for a subgrant, but perhaps are not accepted or awarded a subgrant, we do have a couple other opportunities. We have civic engagement microgrants and community event sponsorships. Both of these are up to $500, and we accept these on a rolling basis throughout the year. Our civic engagement microgrants go towards civic engagement events, so things like voter outreach, tabling for voter registration. I think actually all these photos here are from our civic engagement microgrants. Um, we've had some groups. This photo in the center is actually from a college organization, TCNG folks. They hosted an event that brought together the Asian cultural organizations on campus for an event called Boba and Ballots, where they talked about the importance of voting. Below that, we have our friends from Out Front Metuchen who hosted a pizza party to write postcards to voters. And then on the right, we have our friends from East Brunswick from the APITA Alliance who hosted also a boba event and in partnership with, I think, Youth Voters in Action to pop up at a boba shop and share information about voting resources, get out the vote, and all those good things. We also have our community event sponsorships. These ones are a little bit more on like the cultural side. So examples of past events we've supported through this include like Diwali celebrations or Garbas, Lunar New Year celebrations. And again, we want to be flexible with folks. So if you're with an organization that maybe doesn't have its C3 status or you're not fiscally sponsored, but you're putting on this incredible event, we can try to work with you to find, is there a particular item in your event that has a cost that, we would be able to cover, and then we can pay that vendor directly. So again, we want to be flexible, work with folks we know, especially if you're in the early stages of starting out your organization. This kind of support can be quite helpful. Any questions about our civic engagement microgrants or community event sponsorships? Not seeing any, which might mean I shared a ton of information and it was too much, or that I shared the right amount and it was all digested. Right, that is actually our full deck. That's all we had for you today. If folks have any questions, again, feel free to drop them in the chat box. I'll stay on for a couple more minutes, or you can feel free to email me at danielle.iwata. I'll drop this in the chat box at aapi.newjersey.org. Or you can email nick.ramsey@aapinewjersey.org. And just remember, if you're submitting your application, please make sure you send those three documents over to Nick. I think during the application process, I think last year, that was the biggest piece that we had to keep following up with people on. So please make sure that if you're applying, you send in those three documents, that W-9, 990 or org budget, and that project budget to Nick. If you need a template for, a project budget or org budget, you can feel free to reach out to us as well, and we can share some resources. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming tonight. I hope this was a helpful information session. Feel free to keep checking up our website for additional information. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to email myself or Nick. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight.